My name is Jacob Larson, and this is the Common Sense Show. Got some quick info for you. I have a friend of mine, a guy by the name of John Peckham, that owns a construction company here in the local area, and they're offering to put up Christmas lights and Christmas tree removal during the holidays. So if you have a house that you'd like to get lighted but lack the means in which to do so, call John at 541-915-4747. He has a crew and the means to get those lights up for you for about $100. If you have a multi-level, even if you have a multi-level house, so that's a pretty good deal. You can also call him to remove your tree after the holidays. You don't have to do a thing to it. He'll come in, take it down, vacuum up the pine needles, and haul it off for $35 regardless of the size. And that is a great deal. Now, I know that there's some people out there that are thinking, $35 to remove a tree, that's kind of expensive. But it's not really. I mean, I realize there's some people that will do free tree removal. But typically with those, you have to actually remove it from your house, take off the stand, vacuum up the pine needles yourself. It's got to be placed on the street. It's got to be all done in a certain way in order for them to take it. Otherwise, they won't. John would be willing to come into your house, remove the tree, remove the stand, vacuum up the pine needles, do all the cleaning and work for you, haul it out of the house, get it quartered up, and get it hauled out of there. So that's what makes it great. His number, again, is 541-915-4747. His schedule during this time fills up really quick, so don't take your time to call. Make sure you get a call into him as soon as you can so you can get on his schedule. The number again, 541-915-4747, and ask for John. Last week, we had a pastor by the name of Ken Brown on the show. Now, some of the feedback I got suggested that I was a bit too hard on people who attended church. Even my mom had some choice words to say in regards to that. Apparently, there are people out there that felt I actually mean that some people in church should get their heads cut off. And they're right. I do. But that is more of a metaphorical thing. What I really mean is some people that attend church should get hit right square in the eyes with a 2x4 and then get their heads cut off. How do you like that there? And that sounds pretty good.
Right.
Yeah. See, folks, I know I sound bitter and angry, and I am. I have no problem admitting that. But I see a guy like Ken Brown out there in the trenches day after day, and he's loving, caring, willing to put himself out there for other people every day. And as a result, he gets people that show up on Sunday, act like they're listening to what he's saying, and then they walk out those doors, and they don't give it a second thought. And I find that to be a disgrace. This man has spent his entire life, puts his comforts, his needs aside in an effort to give insight to you. The very least you could do is acknowledge what he's saying on Sunday by putting it into practice during the week. See, I personally believe that is why you go to church. It's the purpose for that reason. You're there to learn, glean, and do. It's a training facility on how to behave in this world. And yet you got these people that show up every Sunday and simply attempt to use it as a measure for their perceived faith. And guess what, folks? It isn't. It is no measure, and it means nothing if you don't put it into practice. There are only so many Ken Browns. Guys like him are rare, and they can't do it all. When he's telling you that we aren't playing Santa during the holidays, he's telling you the truth. I've seen him. I've watched him. I know what he does all year round. He's not looking for you to simply give tithe to him. He wants you to do what you've been called to do, what God intends you to do. Seek out people in need and help. Quit leaving it in. Now, I've got some blogs and some stories I'm going to read to you today that I'm going to show you what I mean when I'm saying that. And hopefully it'll give you a better understanding of what I'm talking about. I believe that Christians, some of the most loving, caring, thoughtful people on the planet. And we need to prove that to be true. We need to show people that's true. Don't forget about it when you walk out those doors on Sunday. That doesn't mean you shove your faith down people's throats. That means be real people. Be honest about who you are and what you struggle with. That means seek out people who are hurting and in need and help them. Don't wait on or expect guys like Ken to do it for you. And I mean that in the nicest way possible. So we don't have a guest today on the show, but we do have quite a few things to cover. And Theron, the radio control guy.
That's me.
Say hi.
Hello.
He's going to be my guinea pig today, and I get to bounce things off him, and he's going to be giving his feedback occasionally as he sees fit.
Can I do it now?
Well, occasionally. I said occasionally.
Okay.
So if you have any questions for Theron or myself during the show, please call in at 541-284-7953. Once again, that number is 541-284-7953. Give us a call and tell us what you think. Now, I had a link posted to my wall on Facebook by a guy by the name of Ewart. And this is actually probably about a week and a half late because I actually had this segment kind of tailored fit for last week's show when I was talking to Ken. And then based on my conversation with Ken, I decided to scrap it. And so it's about a week off. But basically, there was a link that he posted on my wall on Facebook. It's an article written by, it's entitled The War on Men. And it was written by a lady by the name of Susan Venker. It was published on November 26, 2012. Now, I want to read parts of the article to you. I'm not going to read all of it. But what I want you to do is Google this article and read it in its entirety online. It's called The War on Men. It's by Susan Venker. It's published November 26, 2012. I've also posted a link to it on my Facebook page, so you can check that out. Okay, so check this out. The War on Men. The battle of the sexes is alive and well. According to Pew Research Center, the share of women ages between 18 to 34 that say how marriage is one of the most important things in their lives rose 9 percentage points since 1997, from 28% to 37%. For men, the opposite occurred. The share voicing this opinion dropped from 35% to 29%. Believe it or not, modern women want to get married. Trouble is, men don't. The so-called dearth of men, marriageable men, has been a hot subject in the media as of late. Much of the coverage has been in response to the fact that for the first time in history, women have become the majority of the U.S. workforce. They're also getting most of the college degrees. The problem? This new phenomenon has changed the dance between men and women. Now, this is the thing. Now, I'm going to read some more, but this is the thing. The first few episodes I did when I first started this thing, I talked about the difference between men and women, the fact that men and women are different, the fact that it's a good thing and there's nothing wrong with that, and that the liberal media likes to paint a different picture. And I've had a lot of people, kind of say to me, well, why do you think that, or why do you say that? This is a prime example of that. Okay, this is a woman. This is actually it's a Fox News contributor. So a lot of people, when I say that, they're automatically going to dismiss it. But this is a woman that after she wrote this article, she's taken all sorts of flack and feedback from this article. This article goes on to say, and the reason why I bring it up is because this article basically solidifies everything I've been saying the last few weeks. I mean, it's almost hand in hand. She goes on to say, I've spoken with hundreds, if not thousands of men and women. And in doing so, I've accidentally stumbled upon a subculture of men who've told me in no uncertain terms that they're never getting married. And then I ask why. The answer is always the same. Women aren't women anymore. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think that's anything new in terms of men not wanting to get married. I think that's pretty typical, wouldn't you agree? For the most part. I mean, obviously there's some guys out there that want to get married. Typically, that's been the joke for a long-running joke for a long time, is that, for a woman to get rid of a man, all she has to do is start talking about commitment and marriage and rings and stuff like that and kids, and then they go away. So that's kind of a long-standing joke. But her point is, women aren't women anymore. And then she goes on to say gender relations have changed dramatically is an understatement. Ever since the sexual revolution, there's been a profound overhaul in the way men and women interact. Men haven't changed much. They had no revolution that demanded it. But women have changed dramatically. In a nutshell, women are angry. They're also defensive, though often unknowingly. That's because they've been raised to think of men as the enemy. I mean, you hearing that? They've been raised to think of men as the enemy. Armed with this attitude, women push men off their pedestal. Women had, she puts in brackets, she says, women had their own pedestal, but feminists convinced them otherwise, and climbed up to take what they were taught to believe was rightfully theirs. What they were taught to believe was rightfully theirs. Now men have nowhere to go. It is precisely this dynamic, women good, men bad, that has destroyed the relationship between the sexes. Yet somehow, men are still to blame for when love goes awry. She goes on to say, but what if the dearth of men, I don't even know what dearth is.
I don't either.
All I know is it sounds kind of bad, right?
Yeah,
the dearth of men. I don't even get that. I need a spell check or something here, or to Google it. You might want to look it up. The dearth of men and ongoing battle of sexes is, hold on to your seats, women's fault. This is Susan Venker saying it's women's fault. And then she goes on to say, you'll never hear that in the media. All the articles and books, television programs for that matter, put women front and center while men and children sit in the back seat. After decades of browbeating the American male, men are tired of being told there is something fundamentally wrong with them, tired of being told that if women aren't happy, it's men's fault. Contrary to what feminists like Rosen, author of The End of Men, say, the so-called rise of women has not threatened men. It's pissed them off. And see, this is the best part. This is what I think the best part of the whole thing is. She goes on to say, it has also undermined their ability to become self-sufficient in the hopes of someday supporting a family. Men want to love women, not compete with them. They want to provide for and protect for their families. It's in their DNA, but modern women won't let them. See, that to me, I mean, it's like, that's exactly it. That's the truth. That's exactly what I've been talking about. And this is a Fox News contributor, Susan Venker, writes this. She's a female. She's come to the same conclusion I have. See, it's funny, as a male, you can bring this stuff up. You can try to talk to people about it. You can say, hey, you know what? There is kind of an issue going on here. This type of behavior that I'm seeing as a male when I'm out and about from women, it's not a good thing. Something's going on here. It's not right. It's wrong. And it's not progressive. It's not a better thing. It's actually going backwards in terms of how women are to be treated. They're being treated worse now because of how they behave and what they're doing to their men. You want your man to be a man, you have to allow him to be a man. You can't step on his toes. If he goes to open the door, you can't sit there and argue with him or fight over who's going to open the door. You got to let him open the door. Do you open doors for women?
I do.
Yeah. And why do you do that? Is that because you're a male chauvinistic pig and you are,
No, I don't know. It's something that I've always done. My dad did that for my mom. I guess that's where I got it. And
so it's social programming on your part?
I suppose so, yeah. It's just, but you know what? It's funny because, I hold doors for anybody. I actually had a guy get really upset with me because I held the door open for him at the post office. I can open my own door.
Was he old?
Yeah.
Okay, well, there you go. But the point of the matter is, it says here, they want to provide and protect for their families. It's in their DNA. That's what men want to do. Men actually want to do those things. They want to do things for women. They typically stop doing those things when they get resistance or bad feedback from women. And if you have guys that don't do those things, it's typically because they've never been taught, or they simply are self-centered people, man. I mean, you look at these women. See, my big concern about this when I owned the cleaning business is I would have these women that would come in, they would apply for these jobs, and they'd want to get hired on doing janitorial, and they were looking for any hours they possibly could, but they had a hard time juggling between getting a babysitter and working and stuff like that because dad wasn't around. Mm-hmm. The guy that knocked them up wasn't around.
Right.
So here you got these women, they're looking for a man Have you ever seen the stickers on the back of cars? I mean, they've got the little I don't know what they are. They've got stickers, and it's got mom, and it's got the kids, it's got the dog, and it's got the cat, and then under the guy portion it says position available.
Oh,
You ever seen that?
I've not seen that.
It's actually kind of funny. Okay, here you've got these women that have, for somehow, some way, hooked up with a guy. He either said whatever they wanted to hear, and for whatever reason they decided to get together with this guy. They ended up getting pregnant. They've got a kid, and then the guy's out of there. And the guy's out of there, and he's not thinking about his responsibility, what's happened, what she's going through, none of that stuff. It's out the door, out the window. And first and foremost, guys, I have absolutely no respect for guys like that. None at all. I'm not encouraging that behavior at all. I'm not saying that's a woman's fault. I'm saying a guy that in that situation, a guy is definitely not being a responsible person, a responsible adult. He deserves to get his head cut off. I mean, just to throw that in. But in terms of women, okay, seriously, there is another part of the equation there, and how you treat your men and how you expect men to behave and act is very, very important. You should expect your man to provide and protect for you. And if he's not doing that for you, then he's not a man, in my opinion. He's a male. He's a fake wannabe. You need to kick him to the curb. And you need to recognize those things before you get pregnant. I mean, that's kind of the key thing. The person you're hanging out with, is he the type of guy that's going to provide and protect for you? If he is, great, then continue. By all means, proceed. If he's not, then you need to kick him to the curb. He needs to go away, because you're just gonna suffer the results of his piss poor behavior if you stick with the guy. Okay, so he goes on to say, it's also unfortunate for women, not for men. And that's true, because women are the ones who suffer. Women are the ones who suffer. Feminism serves men very well. They can all have sex at hello and even live with their girlfriends with no responsibilities whatsoever. See, that's the truth. It's the women who lose. That's what she says. So if men today are slackers, she goes on to say, if men today are slackers, if they're retreating from marriage, women should look in the mirror and ask themselves what role they've played to bring about this transformation. Then she goes on to say, and this actually ties it up, fortunately, there's good news. Women have the power to turn everything around. They absolutely do, in my opinion, because that's what I've been saying, because women rule the world. They truly do. All they have to do is surrender to their nature, their femininity, and let men to surrender to theirs. If they do, marriageable men will come out of the woodwork. Now, this article caught my attention. Let's see, about a week and a half ago. Susan Venker, The War on Men, published November 26, 2012. And no sooner did this article come out, 2 days later, maybe a day and a half, 2 days later, I'm watching TV. I rarely watch TV. And when I do watch TV, it's typically on Fox News. But this rare occasion, I'm watching Comedy Central. And Stephen Colbert comes on. He has a show called The Colbert Report. You heard of that, right?
Oh, yeah.
He's a comedian.
He's great.
Yeah, he's funny. His show's about political humor and satire. That'll give you kind of an indicator. But the bottom line is this guy takes different things that he sees or hears, different articles that he reads or different news clips or things about politics or different people, and then he does a spin to them and he makes jokes about them. And so not only has Susan Venker had a ton of feedback from the liberal feminism standpoint, or whatever you want to call it, that has really beat her up on that article. But Colbert actually decides that he's going to make fun of it, and he makes a joke of it. And that's the crazy thing, because here you've got a guy that has taken something that is actually good material. I mean, this is good, well-written article, makes sense. It's valuable to people who are in relationships. It's important to know that if you're with your mate, you don't want to be in competition with him. And he makes fun of it. He goes on, let's say, Colbert says, he makes fun of the statements that women are angry and defensive. One of the jokes he makes, let's see here. I'm reading down here. He says, women are angry and defensive. You need proof? Go up to any single woman and say, you aren't married. The reason you aren't married is because you're angry and defensive. Okay, so I get his point. I mean, that's funny.
Yeah.
But, I mean, haha, whatever. He laughs at, surrendering to their nature. He says, yes, just surrender to your nature, and those men will come out of the woodwork like cockroaches in a darkened crab shack. And he says, but ladies, you can do more by doing less. Maybe stop voting or stop talking. That's mysterious. I mean, what are you girls thinking? Follow Miss Venker's advice, and you single gals will finally be able to live out every woman's wildest dream, marrying a man that doesn't want you to achieve anything. I mean, seriously. Then he pops off with, men hate women for women to compete with them. That's why it's so rare for men to be attracted to women in the workplace. He pops off about, the comment that she made about women not being women anymore. He says, women aren't women anymore. That's right, men. Always look for the Adam's apple. That's a pro tip. Then look for the Adam's penis. Because you know what they say, fool me once. And I mean, that's great. Because some of that stuff is funny. And some of the statements she made, like I said, about in terms of, men not wanting to get married, that type of deal. I mean, that's all. I mean, that's fairly common. I mean, everybody knows that. But this is a prime example of what I've been talking about. The liberal media wants to spin it. The liberal media wants to dismiss it. The liberal media wants to shut it up. Colbert has a ton of viewers. He has a ton of viewers. He's not doing people justice by making jokes about things that are actually, it's a pretty important concept to figure out. He talks about, he basically paints Venker as the woman who is, he paints Venker as a woman who's keeping other women down, or trying to keep other women down, trying to put women, back in the kitchen, barefoot and pregnant type of. He paints her as the type of person, or based on her article, as someone who's trying to, convert the modern day woman back into the 1950s woman. But then he ends his clip with a quip about how she should get out of the writing business, and it's not in her nature to write. So instead of going, hey, I don't agree with what the woman said, but I got to hand it to her. She's done one heck of a job. That type of thing. No, he's got to demonize her, and he's got to do the very thing to her that he's accusing her of doing. Putting her back in the kitchen.
Right.
And so that's why I find that's why I find it fascinating. I think that it's an absolute disgrace. And I think that, like I said, Colbert gets a ton of viewers. He absolutely gets a ton of viewers. And I think it's a very sad thing for those viewers who typically, you gotta think about it. You gotta look at it this way. These two takes on the male and female relationship aspect of things are on two totally different formats. Venker's is actually, her message is actually given through a legit source. And then you have Colbert's, it's done through satire. It's done on a joke site, Comedy Central. It's not to be taken seriously. But because I talked about earlier because we have this level of stupidity that sweeps across America. I know that seems a little tough, and you smile at that. We have this level of stupidity that sweeps across America. People don't want to watch news. People don't want to read news articles. So the information, in a way, gets kind of lost. It gets kind of lost. And the people who need to hear these things, who really need to get a grasp on the concept, hey, if you're in a relationship, it's probably not a good idea to compete with each other that way. It's not the best thing to do. It doesn't actually promote a honest, loving, growing relationship. It does just the opposite of that.
But that's not really covered in the news so much.
Okay, but that article is.
Okay, yeah.
That article was shown in the news. I mean, that was, like I said, it's from Fox.
Right.
Fox News. And there's like some people out there like this isn't news, but it's also one of the, the largest, widest listened to and watched news source out there. So that kind of shows you what that means. But the bottom line is, here you have a comedy. Colbert's take is totally the opposite of Susan's. It's on a comedy show, but I'm guessing that his show is actually going to get more exposure than Susan's.
Oh, probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's a big star.
So what message is being delivered here?
Well, true, that would be his.
Right, because Susan's
and
crazy.
I didn't see the show.
Susan's crazy.
But, normally he kind of takes the approach as the conservative, in satire form.
I like I said, I think that he did offer some funny jokes. I laughed.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, I read the original article, and I know I could tell with the article the reason and intent behind it. It wasn't out there to bash and beat on women. It was to hold up a mirror, looking at herself and with other women and saying, hey, do we have a problem here based on something we've done?
Well, I think she didn't really, and I also didn't see her article, but from what you explained there, it kind of sounds like she didn't do herself much justice by kind of labeling women in general terms as angry.
Okay, but how else is she supposed to do it?
Well,
seriously.
Yeah.
She doesn't have when you're writing an article, I've been accused of the same thing, generalizing, and I do that all the time. Right. On purpose. No different than I started out this segment with telling people how I'd like to cut people's heads off. If they go to church. Ken Brown was on the show last week, and I'm talking to him about people who go to church and the different type of attitudes and stuff like that. And I have immediately taken all of his entire congregation, and I've thrown it into a category of people who don't think about the sermon, don't think about God, don't think about doing things, and they simply walk out the door and they totally forget about it. And I say they should all have their heads cut off. And that is a 150% total general statement. You and I both know, sitting here, that's not the case. You and I both know that there are tons of people who go to church on a routine basis that do take it to heart, that do apply it to their personal lives, that do actually go out and do what they can. I'm taking the minority segment of the church population, and I'm blowing it up into everybody and making a generalized statement to them and saying it applies to everybody when I know, in fact, it doesn't.
Right.
And I'm doing that on purpose because the bottom line is it doesn't hurt for me to tell everybody that goes to church, hey, you need to consider it. Hey, this is something you should think about when you're sitting there in the pew. Whether or not you're actually taking it to heart, whether or not you're actually listening to the message, whether or not you're actually going out. If I, for 1 minute, were to say, I realize this doesn't apply to everybody. I realize that the vast majority of people who go to church don't have this problem. What I've done is I've planted a seed in the mind of the listener, the person who's heard what I've just said, that what I'm about to say that's going to hurt, that's going to cut, it doesn't apply to them. They're automatically going to assume that they fit into the vast majority of the people that it doesn't apply to. And so I'm not going to do that. I don't want to do that. I want the message to come hard and fast, right square between the eyes, so that you stop and you check yourself. And you analyze yourself and you go, does this apply to me? Is what he's saying apply to me? Because he hasn't given me an out here. He hasn't given me a pass. So is this something that I need to think about? And that's all Susan's done. She's done the same thing. All she's saying is, hey, does this apply to you? As a woman in the relationship you're in, does this apply to you? Now, she had to defend it a little bit. She had... like I said, she had some rebuttals here. She says, my goal is to get women to look in the mirror and say, what is your part in this gender debate? Is it the woman's fault? And I think that, I think that's a good thing. I don't think there's anything wrong with telling women, hey, you need to look in the mirror and see how you're contributing to what's going on.
Right. Right. Yeah, if she's doing it, in that way of, being promoting consciousness of, yourself, how do you measure up?
And a lot of what, I mean, a lot of what she, like I said, what she wrote, I mean, it's even done with question marks behind it. It's almost like she's asking the question. I mean, I can tell by the gist of the article what her opinion is, what her belief is.
Right.
But you can tell she's written it in a way that she's tried to write it in a way, let's put it that way, that is less direct, less offensive. And I don't see anything wrong with that. I just think that, like I said, Colbert didn't do anybody any justice by not at least acknowledging the basics of what she was saying.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the part that I think the liberal media, and that is liberal media. You want to get your news from Comedy Central? By all means, go for it. But that's the take you're going to get. You're going to get half information, misinformation. You're going to get information that isn't going to actually help you. It's going to. I mean, you can laugh about stuff like that. You can laugh about a guy opening a door for you.
Right.
You can make fun of him for it.
Yeah.
And then he's just going to stop doing it. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
All right, folks. So we got a break coming up here. We're going to go to the break, and we'll be back with more.
And if you want to chime in, get involved in conversation, give us a call here, 541-284-7953, and we'll be right back.
Right now at Hometown Buffet, turn Thursday night into an awesome family night. Every Thursday from 5 to 8 p.m., kids eat for just 99 cents with the purchase of an adult meal. Enjoy fun activities and all-you-can-eat dessert at family night. Only at Hometown Buffet.
Hi. Party. No playlist. No problem. iHeartRadio does the rest. Download the free app now at iHeartRadio.com.
My brother, I was raising him. I was taking care of him when I was 3-4 years old. There was no possible way for me to come home, watch the kids, give them a bath, then cook dinner for everybody and clean and still get my homework done. So I would probably stay with you because there's so many kids that you have to grow up real fast.
At a young age.
Real fast. Because, I mean, if there's nobody there to do it, you got to do it.
Like she said, you can walk down the hallway and see me. I just have a smile on my face. On the inside, I'm like really, really crying. I'm hurting because it's like, wow, how can I manage to do all this at such a young age? So it's a mind thing. You have to have your mindset that, hey, if this is what you want to do, go for it. Find you some more support and do what you have to do.
Hopefully, I'll be able to study and be able to get my stuff done, but just not knowing what's going to happen in the future, that's what scares me. That I'm hoping that I'll be able to maintain my grades and stay in school.
Give your friends the boost they need to graduate. Go to boostup.org and send a message in your own words. Brought to you by the U.S. Army and the Ad Council.
Our day starts very early.
And we're back. This is Jacob Larson with the Common Sense Show. Sitting here with Theron here. We're discussing the meaning of life. Just got done talking about Susan Venker, her article about the war on men, and Colbert's take on that. And I wanted to talk about, last week when I was talking with Ken Brown, I had brought up a blog called January. And, it's a holiday season. I told Ken at the time and Theron at the time, I did plan on talking a little bit more about the holidays and the different things, my take on the holidays. And, my take's probably a little bit different than most. I'm a little bit more, I guess, hardcore about it in some ways.
Hardcore traditional or?
Just in terms of what we're doing and what it means and the aspect of it. I'll give you a better idea here what I'm talking about. I wrote a blog December 26th, 2008. Okay, so this is an old blog. And I'll probably end up reposting it after show because it still applies today. But this was done a few years back, the day after Christmas. I was feeling apparently, I don't know, inspired, and I decided to write this blog. So I wrote this blog. It's called January. It says the holiday season has come and gone, and now we're facing a new year. 60 days ago, I would have never thought that it would have turned out like it did. And yet, now that it's over, looking back, I'm left with the feeling of relief and remorse. It always comes the same every year. After October, people start to prepare for Thanksgiving and Christmas. They start planning where they're going to go, what family or loved ones they're going to see, what gifts and for who they're going to buy, and what organizations they're going to donate to, along with what food drive they'll participate in. It's almost like they spend 10 months out of the year in a fog, and then wake up and all of a sudden notice the people around them. I'm guilty of it too. They talk about the less fortunate during the holiday season. They speak of the troops that won't be home for Christmas. Churches massive food drives to provide for holiday meals. Even the Marines gather Toys for Tots. And it's great. It truly is. But in my holiday cheer, in my spirit of giving, I have to wonder about January. See, in January, we'll hear about season and our new president. In January, the names, faces, circumstances, needs, wishes for Christmas will be on hold, only to sit dormant, silent, for 10 more months till the next year. Silent cries of desperation, unnoticed till next November. So I'm glad I was able to do what I've done for the handful of people that were placed at my door, but I have a hard time feeling good about it. I have a hard time walking away and thinking, wow, that was great. I really changed something there. I really helped them out. Did I? Did I really do anything? Or did I simply delay the inevitable? Sure, their mortgage is covered this month. It's Christmas. But they'll lose that house anyway in January. Today, because it's Christmas, they'll eat well and be warm. I'll make sure of that. But not in January. I see the faces, the situations, the pain safely hidden behind the eyes, things that has taken years to develop. And I can only offer a reprieve during the holiday season. And I'm supposed to feel good about that? If only to tip the scale, walk by and whisper a word, or gently blow into their life a way that would change it forever. Forever. So that the look or the glance or the circumstance or situation would never be the same. Not to delay it or subside it, but to erase it permanently. Now that would be something to be excited about. Secret Santa. You know, the person in the news, the media always seems to find each year putting money in people's pockets. Where are you in January? What reason could you possibly have for not being present in January? Do you need a cause? Is it simply the wrong month? See, I'd respect you more if I never heard about you. If your face never showed up on the evening news. If the things you did just happened and no one knew who or why. If November and December weren't the only frickin' months you were around. So did you help someone this season? Santa, did you do a good deed? Did you buy a meal? Give some cash during this festive holiday season? Goody. Don't forget about January. Don't forget about the crap that people still have to endure for the next 10 months of our new year. Don't get me wrong, I love the holidays. But while people are busy shopping and planning and preparing, I'm looking back over the year and wondering, who would I miss? What glance, what look, what whisper or situation did I miss? And regardless of how many pats on the back I get, regardless of how many well dones or thank yous, I remember things or people or circumstances that could have been done differently. And it's those things that remind me that even though I got it right in November and December, I should have been doing it all along. So as we're facing this new year, I pray for forgiveness and mercy and grace, not for what I've done, but for what I failed to do, that it will be remembered and done better in January. That's my blog.
Good.
What do you think?
It's good. While you were reading it, it got me thinking, I think there's definitely a lot of effort, just like the guest that you had last week. He's doing this all year round. It's not just a seasonal thing.
Ken's unique.
And I think there's a lot of people that are doing that. It's just, it's not necessarily fashionable in the media, perhaps.
You think so?
Yeah. People, you see these stories always during the holiday season.
Of course.
And, I think it's to bring awareness. But, yeah, the awareness stops. But I think there's still a lot of really great people that are still keeping it going.
Well, so I'm generalizing again.
Mm-hmm.
But in a way, I'd kind of disagree. I think that there are a lot of organizations, nonprofit organizations, that continue to do things like this throughout the entire year. I think that there's for instance, the Salvation Army. Mm-hmm. Now, I was a bell ringer for them. I think it was this last weekend. I was out the Fred Meyers there on West 11th, and I got to wear one of those aprons, and I got to stand there, and I rung a bell for, I think it was 2 hours. Me and my daughter actually did it. And it says on the it says on the lapel or the apron that we wear, it says, "Need knows no season." Need knows no season. Mm. And so need doesn't go away. It doesn't become present and disappear simply because it's the holiday season. I mean, it's still present in January. So I know that there's organizations like that. That's one of the reasons why I like the Salvation Army. I mean, they typically are very very much conscious, very much aware of what's going on, and what they do is very. I mean, their goal is to feed the poor and clothe the poor. That's what they do. And so they send out hundreds of thousands of food boxes, and they have distribution centers set up all over. They have the different thrift stores in the different locations, and they do that to generate money so they can create the food boxes and give it out. It literally goes in one door and out the other with the Salvation Army. All the money that comes in immediately goes out to people in need. So I know that there's organizations like that. I'm speaking more in terms of individuals. I think individuals, for the most part, the New Year rolls around after the New Year celebration.
Yeah, they forget about it.
They forget about it.
Yeah.
I think they totally forget about it.
Mm-hmm. We have a call.
We do.
Let's
see who we got.
All right.
Hi, this is Jacob Larson on the Common Sense Show. Who am I talking to?
Hey, Pastor Ron.
Hey, how are you?
Good. I just wanted to comment. Don't you think the need is actually more severe in winter? I mean, we are all cognizant of the fact that people need help, but, wintertime's a little brutal on our emotional stability, the sense that the weather's turning cold and the days are shorter, and it could be depressing. You know what I'm saying? So the need's greater, I think, and that's probably why we respond more to the call for help.
So you think then it's the call for help, or it's somewhat justified in the to promote it the way it is because of the season?
Yeah, the days are shorter and it's colder and it's harder to survive, out on the street when the weather's dismal.
But what if I'm not talking specifically about delivering food boxes or giving clothes? What about people who struggle on their jobs, struggle to make rent, struggle to get a car fixed? I mean, I don't know about you, but I mean, when I've worked jobs in the past, I mean, sometimes vehicles break down, and replacing an alternator on a vehicle is kind of a big deal. It's kind of a big deal, Ron.
It is.
So that isn't something that happens, just when it's winter in the colder months. That happens throughout the year.
Well, it seems like our alternators go out in the winter more because there's more use on them, and the battery goes out because it's got a heavier draw on it during the winter. We run the lights more and the wipers and the heater.
So what about being short on rent? Does that only come up in
Yeah.
November and December?
Yeah,
Yeah.
brutal.
Well,
Well, again, it goes to what you were talking about with Susan's blog and your blog. You know, we're sensitive to these things because, you know, the news all year long. I mean, we've worked from, what is it, you work till middle of April now to pay the government the share that we owe. In the news, just sort of overwhelms us. And there's just this time of Christmas cheer that we can retreat and think and give, and it's a good time.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not by any means saying that that spirit of giving and people doing food boxes and stuff during the Christmas holiday season is a bad thing. I don't think that's the case at all. I think it's great. I'm simply saying that thought process of considering your fellow man needs
Right.
to be carried throughout the entire year. And it shouldn't be limited to simply food boxes and blankets and stuff like that. I think that people have issues that they struggle with throughout the entire year, not just during the holidays. And I think that it's important to look at that.
Well, and we talk about social friends. We've got so many thousand friends on Facebook, but they're really not our friends. I mean, how many of them would come help us move if we called and said, hey, I'm moving Saturday, or, they're acquaintances. And we tend to isolate ourselves out of society more so than we did maybe 50 years ago.
So so you're saying Facebook is to blame for the disconnect with people?
No, the social disconnect is to blame for our perception of what we see in terms of not looking at
I totally agree with that.
of our fellow man.
Because they're not present. They're not actually in our area. So
Well, no, I mean, okay.
We have more of a sense of an anonymity.
okay.
And think about, maybe 20, 30 years ago, everybody knew their neighbors. Now you don't
Right.
know the person living next to you.
Right.
And that's just the way our society has become.
Okay, so listen, I'll concede on that. I'll agree with both of you. But basically, you guys are painting a picture like it's a downhill slope and things are actually going to get worse. People are going to become less caring, less giving. They're going to do even less based on the way you're describing it.
Well, I think it's a culmination of the talking heads. We have to rise above that, and what we're being told in the media has more of an agenda, and we need to rise above that. And I think that's what you're trying to
Rise above that, meaning
Well, out of the
define that for me.
despair and gloom and doom that we have. How many days is it till December 21st and the world's
How are we
over?
supposed to
why
do
worry
that?
about the fiscal
How are we
cliff?
supposed to do that, Ron, when we can't pay rent?
I know.
What do you mean you know? I'm asking you. How are we supposed to do that when we can't pay rent, when we're struggling to pay rent? We're supposed to rise above the doom and gloom, help somebody. How are we supposed to do that when we can't pay rent?
That's the dilemma, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the dilemma. That's what I'm talking about. I mean, the bottom line is you've got circumstances and situations like that go on all year round. They don't just happen in November and December. And people are disconnected from the people that they live and work with and stuff like that. And there's a lot of things that come through. It's like, sometimes it takes very little to help somebody out. Sometimes it's just...
Also, there's this hidden agenda in our thinking and in our minds. And, if you went out on Black Friday and bought a 50-inch plasma and didn't pay your rent for December, I'm really not too concerned.
Okay. Of course, and I wouldn't be too concerned about a circumstance like that either. But there are a lot of, and you're right, there's a lot of circumstances and situations where people kind of create their own life. And actually, that's part of the Tarbosh segment in terms of they create the world that they live in, in a way.
Right.
But I mean, my point is, I'm not sitting here saying, oh, just go ahead and give money or help away frivolously. I mean, obviously you want to look at who you're giving it to and what they're doing with it and that type of thing. But I mean, the bottom line is I'm saying, in terms of giving, the thought process, the attitude, the concept behind it, it should not be a seasonal thing. This should not be a seasonal thing. I'm not always talking about just money. I mean, sometimes it's just a gesture. Sometimes it's just a response or the way you treat somebody. Simply saying that you never know where people are at in their life or what they're going to need, and you should be in tune with that. You should have kind of your radars up as you're going around. That's all I'm talking about. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree with you.
Okay, now, will you agree with this? Don't you think that concept should not have to be sold? It should come natural to people who go to attend church.
Well,
There's
I do agree with that as well. But again, I think it goes back to the thing that both of you were talking about just a moment ago, and that's that we have a social perception of isolation and fear. And because there are simply more of us in this world than there were 50 years ago, I guess the news media has frightened us to where we're actually afraid to reach out and find out if this guy. Look at the viral picture of that cop giving that guy a boot and a set of boots and a set of socks. I mean.
So you're saying that we're actually discouraging people to help or give based on the way things are set up now, fear and the social media and that type of thing.
Yeah.
Well, why? Okay, so once again, why wouldn't you give in secret, which is what you're supposed to be doing anyway?
It takes something out of me to find out, do you need money for your rent because you bought a 50-inch plasma in November? I mean, those are all judgment calls, But I also have to know that I'm not wasting my money.
It takes work. It takes work. It takes work on the person who gives.
Right.
What's wrong with that? I got no problem with it taking a little bit of work for the person who gives.
It's just difficult.
Okay.
It's uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable, and it's difficult. Pastor
Ron, it's like trying to understand a woman. It's uncomfortable.
Okay, all right. Hey, I appreciate you calling in, and we're gonna continue some more stuff. But thanks for calling in, buddy.
You bet.
So yeah, I mean, you've got. Sure, you've got obviously. You've got different outside influences that are going to tell you whether or not you should give, how you should give. The method and means you do it could affect you in some way, I guess. I guess that's the point he was trying to make. Is that what he was saying?
Yeah.
But I don't think that should stop or prevent you from giving. I think you should do it anyway. I do. I think you should do it anyway. I think you should give.
I think so, too.
People should be givers.
Yeah.
Okay, what do we got? What time? How much do we got left?
We got about 7 minutes left.
7 minutes left. I want to get a quick story out. This is what I'm talking about here. We're talking about giving. This is what I'm talking about. Lady by the name of Jennifer Marie Banning. Okay, she posted this on my wall. It's called Christmas Kindness, a true story. And it goes like this. In 1979, when I was 5 years old, my mom, stepdad, and I were at Tommy's Burgers in Wilmington, California, a few days before Christmas. We had just gone into Long Beach trying to see if there were any jobs available for the carpet cleaning business. There were none, and we were at the end of our rope. We were sitting outside at a table. Mom was scrapping in her purse for coins. Scraping. I can't read right. Mom was scraping in her purse for coins. Stepdad was digging in his pockets too. They scraped together just enough money for Mom and I to share a cheap taco and Stepdad to have a cup of black coffee. Mom and I went to the counter, got the taco and coffee, then went back to the table. None of us talked. I'm sure we looked pretty bleak. As Mom split the taco, she realized she forgot the napkin, so she sent me back to the counter for some. When I got to the counter, a man came up alongside of me and handed me an envelope. He said, "See that white truck?" And he pointed into the parking lot. I acknowledged. "When you see that truck leave, give the envelope to your mom," said the man. I went back to the table, waited and watched. As soon as the truck made the left turn out of the lot, I gave the envelope to my mom. I told her a man gave it to me and wanted me to give it to her. She looked scared, like a perv had been talking to me. She opened it, and inside was $50. My mom started crying, and stepdad too. With that kind gift, we were able to have a Christmas dinner for the whole family and a couple gifts for my sister and I. God bless the man that was so kind to us. I still remember and appreciate his kindness 30 years later. I do not know whether this man was a believer in Christ or not, but God's love for us shined brightly through the kind stranger that day. Of all the Christmases I have celebrated in the last 30 years, this is the one that has meant the most to me. An unselfish act from a stranger helped our family during a very bleak time financially. He gave to us without strings attached and without expectation of anything in return. For me, this is this part of what Christmas is about. Giving a gift freely out of love and kindness. It's not about how many gifts, how much they cost, or worry about who may feel slighted for not receiving a gift. Christmas is about Christ, rejoicing and celebrating the gift God has given to us, Jesus. See, I think this is exactly what I'm talking about. This is something that was done for her as a little girl. And she remembered it the rest of her life. It had such an impact. That's the type of stuff I want. I mean, those are the type of stories I'd like to hear about. That's the stuff I think is totally cool. Now, obviously, this happened through the Christmas season, and she goes on to say, if you know anybody who's in desperate need this Christmas season, if you're able to help somebody, if you know anybody, personally check with your local church, food bank, shelter, other agencies for ways to volunteer or give. You can make a difference in someone's life. But I thought that story was great, and that's exactly what I'm talking about in terms of giving, in terms of the holiday season. Do it anonymous. If people go on about tithes, you can deliver tithes, but once again, tithes to be up close and personal. Do we have time? We have 3 minutes?
3 minutes.
Okay, I'm going to shoot through this real quick. The Tarbosh segment of the show. Change the way you think to change the way you speak. Change your actions to develop effort to get results. You see the progression here? How you do things all begins with what you think about them. You created the world you live in. You're responsible for its success or its failure. Your thoughts, your actions, what you do, how you do it, it is responsible for how things turn out in your life. So if you're living a life you'd like to change, if you're in a relationship that's struggling, if you're working a job that you don't like, etc., it's up to you to change it. And you have to start with changing your thought process. You have to recognize the thoughts or seeds in your mind that you have allowed to grow and you have to determine if those thoughts are bearing the fruit you want. If not, if they're simply causing you problems, then you need to think different thoughts, planting different seeds of thought in your brain to get different results. So how do you do that? You read. You need to read on the subject, circumstance, or situation you're dealing with to get a different perspective so that you have more tools of thought to pull from in your mental toolbox. Far too often, people will go through situations in their life or deal with various circumstances entirely unaware that it's their own thought process and how they go about dealing with something that is at the core root of the problem, the core root of why they're struggling. That does not have to be you. Change the way you think to change the way you speak, to change your actions to get results. And that is the Tarbosh segment of the show. Quick info for you. I got a minute left. The Salvation Army needs volunteers to help assemble Christmas food boxes on Wednesday and Thursday, December 12th and 13th. They will also need help with distribution on Wednesday and Thursday, December 19th and 20th, when the families come to pick them up. For more information to volunteer, please call Olive and George Wild at 541-937-2644. 541-937-2644. If you like what you heard today on the show, folks, please go to the website, www.buycommonsense.com. Click on the link to the show and check out the sponsor section. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week.